Hi, this is Megan, and I read 8 books in March, and I'm going to review them today with you guys. We're going to start off with Watermoon. This is by Samantha Soto Yambao. Hopefully, I'm not butchering that. This book was really good. It gave very strong Studio Ghibli vibes, very fantasy, magical, like a fun adventure type of deal. And towards the end, it really tied itself together. It was a lot of fun. I read this after my husband. He read this a couple months ago. He recommended it to me. So as part of our book club, we decided to read the same book. So I read this one after him. I definitely recommend it. The ending was great. It was cute. I honestly, the only thing I didn't like about it was one part of the ending was the main character's mom. I thought she was like the typical selfish mom that like kind of just, I don't know, just she rubbed me the wrong way of, and they kind of brushed past it like, oh no, what she did was for a purpose, but she was still kind of like not cool. Like it just, without spoiling it, it just kind of gave me the vibes of like, oh, it's a generational mom does no wrong, we're just going to sweep it under the rug, which I didn't like. So that was just a very, very tiny aspect of this book. I gave this a 5 out of 5. It was a lot of fun, just a really magical, fun experience, and I felt like I could picture it in my head as a movie, and I honestly wouldn't be too upset if it was a movie. It was that cute. The Vanishing Season by Dot Hutchison. This was the last book in the installment of The Butterfly Garden. It wasn't, the rest of the books in that series are not totally based off of the first book, The Butterfly Garden, but it has hit like little elements about it, cameos, Easter eggs, like that sort of thing. I was kind of excited about this one just because the main character it's about, the FBI agent Eliza, she was in the second and third book, and then this was her book. So I was excited about it, and I figured I read the rest of them, might as well just finish with this one and go for it. I don't recommend this one. I gave it a 3 out of 5. I really just felt like it was dragging on, and I know it was a police FBI scene and this, that, the other, but it was very slow, and I felt like it was building of Eliza Sterling, FBI Sterling's character, and Brandon's character, the other FBI agent. I feel like it was really building on that and not anything else. The plot was also based around, Brandon's sister's death many, many years ago that they never kind of figured out, and it was a lot of closure for the characters, but it just felt like it wasn't a crime book. It really felt like it was just a drama, a little bit of thriller, not much of the crime aspect, really just drama based, and that's kind of not what I was looking for with this. So it was a miss, but the rest were good. So the whole series I would recommend. You don't have to read this one to finish the series. They're tied in, but very loosely. The Book of Azriel by Amber Nicole. So I saw this one on TikTok for a while, and most of what I was seeing on TikTok was that it was severely underrated. But the only problem was when I opened the book, the text was very small, like Bible paper looking, and it very much turned me off at first. I went to other books instead of going to this one at first. I was supposed to read this in February, and I didn't because I was kind of turned off by that. And TikTok did say this was an underrated book. It was definitely underrated. I liked it a lot. I gave it a 4 out of 5 in the end. And the spice meter was, I believe, a 1.5 or 2. I put it a little bit up there. I like the plot. I love the plot. The gods and monsters. It's very like supernatural, entwined with gods, and I really like the main character, how she's already like this immortal, this god kind of creature, like they call her monster. So she's already a monster. It doesn't take a whole book to build on that. Like she's already there, which I really like because I'm kind of tired of like the character building over and over and over again with fantasy books. And this got right to the point with that part, but it didn't get right to the point until about halfway through. I understand there's, I think 3 more or 2 more books after this, and then there's another one coming out this year. So I do get it. This was the plot building book. However, it did take halfway to get there to the point where I kept putting it down because I was like, oh my gosh, like when is this going to get somewhere? But when it got somewhere, it got somewhere. Liam is like another book boyfriend of this year, along with Kingfisher from Quicksilver. I love the character dynamics between Diana and Liam. I thought they were really sweet, kind of like golden retriever or like German shepherd man vibes. And this woman that just like doesn't take no shit. She doesn't care. She's a badass. And it's truly like an enemies to lovers type story. Like they're born and bred and made to be enemies. And he's a god and she's a monster, gods and monsters. And it slowly comes to fruition. It's a slow burn. But from what I've gathered, the next ones aren't going to be as such of a slow burn. But this slow burn wasn't bad. It was decent, and it got the point right, and the plot was there with it, so it wasn't lost to the spice and the smut. It has a really strong story. I definitely recommend this. If you see it on TikTok, I would get it for sure. Spiral by Bal Kabra. So this is a new, recently come out book. I think it came out in end of February, beginning of March, somewhere around there. I gave this a 2.5 out of 5. I did not like this book at all. I gave The Spice a 1. I really loved Collide, which is the first book in the series. I read that last year around this time. It was a lot of fun. Sure, it was a carbon copy, kind of like Icebreaker, but if you don't read that too many times, like it's not a big deal. It's still entertaining and fun. So when I saw the cover of this one, I was excited because it, gave the element that's still about hockey, but it's about kind of something else. But unfortunately, this one was a miss. I am not a really big fan of slow burns in any type of capacity, horror, thriller, drama, romance, whatever it may be. I'm not a huge fan of slow burns, but I will deal with them. But this was the absolute slowest burn I've ever seen a book do, to the point where they describe this main character as celibate for reasons in the plot. But honestly, if you're going to make a character celibate, I don't see how you can market this book as a sports romance book if 3/4 to almost the end, literally almost the end, 3/4 of the way, it's not spicy at all. Like there's flirtation and romance, but like there's nothing to further back that with any of the spicy scenes or anything like that. And I just feel like this character was written really weird. Like he had a piercing that he was like so edgy and like fun and whatever, and like had this sex mindset, but then he was celibate because of certain plot points, but they couldn't fix that until the very end, and it felt like a huge miss. It just didn't do anything for me, and to the point where I was so disappointed that I don't even recommend this to my coworkers or anything that liked Collide. I'm telling them to skip this one and just go right to the next one, because it was that disappointing for me. Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. I'm really late to this game, I know. I just got to reading this. I bought this probably almost 2 years ago, but I just got around to reading it. And I thought this was really cute. I gave it a 4 out of 5. No spice, obviously, because this is a young adult. Like, there was little bits of flirting here and there, but nothing major. But I really liked this book. I thought it was so cute and whimsical, and like all I was picturing was like pinks and purples and light blues and frillies dresses and like Bridgerton type vibes, and I kind of needed that with all these other books. It was just like dark romance or drama and stuff like that, so I kind of needed this little pick-me-up of a book. The only thing I didn't like sometimes was the main female character, Evelyn. I understand she's a child in this book. It just seemed like she would get herself into these situations and almost like not even think about what the outcome would be. Like, for example, like she would go over to a broken bridge and be like, I think I can climb it. I think I can do it. And then she'd go over the broken bridge and fall and die. And it's like, oh, well, what were the consequences? Like, that's how it felt sometimes with her, with certain scenarios. Like, she would just openly walk into scenarios and situations that she knows are not going to be good for her, and she would do it anyway. And you're like, okay. Like, so I would just kind of like brush past that a little bit because it was a little annoying, but I kind of overlooked it. But I'm excited to see where this goes. The ending was very interesting. I kind of expected something different, but I do like the story. I like the plot that she makes and the characters she makes. It's fun. It's not like, there's dire consequences and blah, blah, blah. Like, it's just fun and it's cute and I like it. A Fated Vow by Amanda Agee. This was truly a TikTok book that I found. I believe it was probably on her page that came up for my For You page. And shout out to TikTok. Don't go away because that's where I get my book recommendations. But I found this on TikTok. I saw the cover and I thought it was really, really cute. And the premise, she put a little synopsis of the premise. So I was like, okay, I'll put it in my list. And then one day I noticed that it was only $6 and I was like, I'm buying it. So I gave this a 4 out of 5. This was really good. It was cute. It was a really good start. It's the first in the series, and I don't believe there's a second slated yet, although she has it listed in the back of the next 2 titles, but I didn't see anything listed yet. I'm assuming this is maybe an independent author, like, you know, just starting off, but if so, just starting off, this was really good. The characters are great. The dynamics were really cool. She puts in the classic romance tropes. I like this world that she built of kind of like, I would say like the Yggdrasil tree or like Norse mythology, like different worlds like stacked on top of each other and like communicate with each other. And the main male character is definitely giving German Shepherd vibes, like super sweet with the female main character. But then when she's in trouble or like he needs to do something, like he snaps and he's ready to go and get it done. And I love stuff like that. Like golden retriever energy sometimes in books is not what I look for. But something like that I look for. Halfway through reading this, I kind of got like these weird, where have I heard this before, where have I read this before vibes, until I realized it's basically like D&D. Like it's like a D&D romance story. Like there's elves and fae and monsters and gods and different creatures, and it was just really giving like D&D vibes, which I thought was really cool. I'm also a sucker for like fated mates and fated soulmates and stuff like that, so this one really hooked me in. And the ending was giving From Blood and Ash kind of like spy secret vibes. So I really recommend this one. It was a lot of fun. If you're looking for a brand new series to start, and I know most people don't like to wait, I don't mind waiting. But if you don't mind waiting, start this and then wait for the next one. And it was a really fun ride. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V. Schwab. So I gave this a 3.5 out of 5. And even though I did give it a 3.5 out of 5, I would still recommend it. I read the other books, A Darker Side of Magic, in that series. I read those same books by this author, and I loved those books. I thought they were a lot of fun. They were fantastic and magical and very old school wording vibes, like Shakespeare, you know, like old, not common words. So I got this one for Christmas and I gave it a try. My husband is still currently reading it. So I just finished this today, probably like an hour ago. And I have a few things about this book. So the plot was great. I really liked the story that she built, and it was very different. I appreciated the new kind of story that I was getting versus everything else that I've been reading. This book did take a while to get in. Like, it was tough to read. It took a little bit to get into. I would say I didn't get invested probably until 150 pages in, and there's 442 in this. That being said, I think it was just a lot of words on a lot of pages. There was a lot that she had to go over for these characters, which is great. But I feel like this could have been summed up a little bit. There were certain chapters about Addie that kind of didn't need to be there. You kind of got the gist after a while. Henry's chapters were fine because you needed to know what was going on. But I did get invested like halfway through. It was good. I still would recommend it just because of the ending and the lessons that this book kind of teaches you. It teaches you about life and death and how to, how to kind of live with your choices and understanding, like, do I want this life? Can I sacrifice this for this? And it gives you a lot of lessons. The ending, I was probably like 30 pages away from it ending, and I had tears coming down my eyes. And to be honest, I didn't like the very, very ending of this book. I felt like, without ruining it, I felt like the ending itself took away the choices that Addie made over the years and the feelings that she had. I feel like it really took those away for her. And seeing as how I don't think there's a sequel to this, it's been 5 years since this came out. I don't think there's a sequel. I don't like that they just left it off like that, and that it just, like, the darkness wins in the end kind of deal, and she doesn't. And it kind of just made me irritated because it's like, okay, like, I thought it was going to be one of two choices, and there was a third choice that wasn't on the table, and that just felt like it ruined her feelings that she had for 350 or 325 years or whatever. It kind of just took those feelings away and said, oh, well, you're not going to get what you want. But that's just me. I know other people love this book and will fight to it for the end, so I think that's just all up to how you interpret it. But I would still recommend it, for sure. And we're ending it on a super sad and great note. Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. When I say that I've been waiting for this book since I was probably like 15 or 16 years old, I'm not exaggerating. I read the first Hunger Games books when I remember specifically, I got them somewhere. I think I bought them with my own money working when I first started working, and I was reading them in my photography class. I finished all my work early because that's how I did it, and I would sit down and read this, and I remember my teacher, she came over and she was like, oh, what book is that? And I'm telling her about it, and I remember a little, like, note in it in the front, and it was like, she's like, oh, can I borrow it? And I let her borrow it, and she gave back, she's like, I really enjoyed this, thank you so much for letting me borrow this, and blah, blah, blah. And I was so hooked from the moment I read the original series. And I read them before the movies came out, so, you know, that's how old I am. So when this came out, I was super excited. I already knew there was going to be heartbreak. But that being said, it truly was a different experience reading this versus getting the information from the other books, because the other books, it was basically, you got a tidbit of what his games were like, but you didn't get it all because that was capital propaganda telling you what you wanted to hear, telling you how the games worked in their eyes, and not telling you the full story. So this gives you the full story of what Haymitch went through, who he lost, why he lost it, how he lost it, and how his games really worked, because Haymitch wasn't a sad boy that hated everyone. Like, the Capitol spun that so hard to be, you know, in the games he was a loner and he didn't want to help anybody until he finally won his games by luck. And that wasn't how it worked. Like, he was friends with everybody and he wanted everybody to live, and he couldn't even discuss, like, how it would be to take down these other kids, because he firmly believed, like, I want to be there for them and we need to be a team and we can figure it out. And that's not how it showed. It showed you how the death came to be, but even the final death of him winning was still a heartbreak, because you know these kids didn't want to be here. Even though she was a tribute one, or a District 1 tribute, even though the final girl was the District 1 tribute, she still didn't want to do it. She was still, you know, realizing, like, oh my god, like, I have to live or die. And that really shows you the humanity that the Capitol doesn't have for these characters. And I can go on and on about this book, I really could, but I didn't tear up in the most parts. I really sat there and was like, holy shit, like, that just happened, the squirrel thing, everybody knows, just happened. It's hard to look at squirrels in the same way now, but I kind of just sat there like, oh my god, really, did that just happen? But I didn't cry until the epilogue, which at the time when I was reading it, I thought I was alone. Turns out I'm not. I truly read that epilogue and sobbed. I sat downstairs, and I will put a picture right here of what I looked like. I sat downstairs crying from the first page, just reading it. I had so many emotions. I knew the loved ones were going to go, and they weren't going to make it. I knew what Haymitch was going to go through, but it still hurt the same way, knowing that he was a good person and that he didn't want to do these things. He didn't want to be in the games. He tried to rebel as much as he could, knowing that he's going to die. He knew the whole time that he was going to die. And he doesn't. But, you know, because of what he did, thinking he was going to die, and then using the force field, a capital flaw, trying to burn down the games, and then lives, it's that, like the other book, you come to terms with what you've done, and you can't go back. I will be thinking about this book for a long time. I don't know if I could reread it now, recently, maybe soon I can, but I don't know if I could, just because I know this hurt me so bad, and the epilogue hurt so bad that I want to tear up now, just talking about it. Haymitch has been one of my favorite characters, just like everybody else, since the first books came out, and this was needed. This was needed now in 2025, and I applaud her for putting this out, and I thank her for continuing this story, as I have tears in my eyes right now. But I gave this a 5 out of 5. I would give it 5 million out of 5. This will be a favorite of this year, I already know. So those are my 9 reads for the month of March. Sunrise on the Reaping was probably my favorite of that month. I am excited to be reading some new books in April. I have Powerless on the list. I have Be Spelled, which is the sequel to Bewitched. And I have Wolfsong, which my husband already read, and he was really trying to get me to read it, telling me he was going to like it. So I have those on the list for April. And yeah, check out our video of my husband and I, Nick, reviewing the books that we read together this month. Just a couple, but we go into a deep dive of how we feel about them and what we liked about them and so on. So check that out, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!